We saw in the last session something very interesting which I forgot to comment upon. If we look at Yoga Sutras and psychoanalysis, there are many areas where it's very difficult to comment on the Yoga Sutras from a standpoint of psychoanalysis for the simple reason the paradigm and the goal and the entity referred to are very different, which is not something that psychoanalysis traditionally deals with. So that is one part of it. Second part of it, in general, one can say that if we look at the human mind and if we look at the functioning of the human mind in three zones: the zone of pathology, the zone of normalcy, and the zone of supernormalcy. Psychoanalysis is very good in the area of the abnormal. Human resource management is very good in the area of the normal. And Indian spirituality is very good in the area of the supernormal. So many of the sutras deal with something which would fall under the category of supernormal, which can be dismissed as impossible or not of interest by psychoanalysis. So on those aspects, it's difficult to comment from the vantage point of psychoanalysis. So essentially, all of us would need three people in our lives for self-development: a psychoanalytic psychotherapist or any other form of psychotherapist dealing with the abnormal, somebody who is an HR manager or a mentor in the area of the normal, and a mystical or spiritual master in the area of the supernormal. And the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali primarily deal with the area of the supernormal. It is something above how a normal man lives by. So we have seen Sutras 11 to 20 last time in session 4. And in those 11 to 20 sutras, Patanjali slowly brings in the definition of the goal state, and he also introduces states which are intermediary stations towards the final state. The final state is of samadhi, and he defines it in the very first 10 sutras. I think it's sutra 2 or first or second sutra, Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So a silent mind is a mind in samadhi. But before this silence is completely reached and there are no thoughts in the conscious mind, to enter into a state of an enduring state of no thought. Before that can happen, there are intermediary states which Patanjali defines in the last, in Sutras 11 to 20, which we saw last time. So let us start moving forward into Sutras 21 to 30. 21, Patanjali says, the goal state or the state of samadhi, the state of no thought, the state of enlightenment, state of kaivalya, state of nirvana. And we said last time all of these are different states, although all of them come under one broad category of samadhi or enlightenment. But the color and flavor of enlightenment is different for different people. Not that there are infinite variations, we see a limited number of variations, but there can be variations. It is not that everyone is referring to the same thing in different words. People have different experiences where the state of no thought is common, but other elements of that state are different. So if we do a state description or state analysis, we can see the difference. So with regard to the goal state of samadhi or enlightenment, Patanjali says, it is easily attainable for those who are intense and focused. It's very necessary. And this thing is what precisely is called tapasya or sadhana or spiritual work, spiritual endeavor. And this has three elements. One, we should accept the spiritual goal, that such a goal is possible and worthy of investing our time and life into. If the goal of enlightenment itself does not appeal to us, there is no question of anything else ahead of it. So the first is, for this to happen, that we can achieve the goal, first we have to accept that such a goal exists and such a goal is valuable. Then one has to be intense and focused to achieve that goal. And these three elements, the acceptance of the goal, the intensity of focus, and the endurance of focus. In most cases, this happens by itself. It is not something that you can do by your will. There is a pressure from inside to do just this and nothing else. However, it is not possible practically for most people to do nothing else. So despite this pressure, they have to do something else, but this keeps happening on its own. This is something where you say it gets done. It is not something that you do by your willpower. It's very difficult to do by one's willpower. It is something that when the time comes, it happens and gets done despite all the difficulties. So Patanjali says it is easily attainable for those who are intense and focused, and one is intense and focused only after one accepts the worthiness, the valuableness of the goal. It is only the valuableness of the goal as the goal of life that justify the intensity and the focus and make it possible. If you see the goal of samadhi as just one more ordinary goal, then it's very difficult to be intense and focused for an ordinary goal. If you see it as one of the many goals in life, again it's very difficult to be intense and focused. And therefore this solemn sincerity, so to say, the one-pointedness towards the goal, it by and large comes from the inside, either because of past karma, because your evolution is nearing completion, or because of grace of some higher being or higher power. In very rare cases, this can be done by willpower. So even if the knowledge is there, it's very difficult to convert this knowledge into action as a reality of one's life purely by conviction or willpower. Even among those sincere, meaning those who have accepted the pricelessness of the goal of samadhi and therefore are able to develop this intensity and focus. Even among the sincere, there are three types: the mild, the moderate, and the extreme. Which is very easy to understand. We see the three types in all categories of human context. In any given context, you have people who are mildly sincere, moderately sincere, and extremely sincere. That is true of all areas of life, including spirituality. And based upon this intensity of sincerity, the methods are different. If we talk about extreme sincerity, extreme intensity, you can have extreme methods. The type of methods we refer to in Agora or left hand part of Tantra or some parts of Vipassana or some parts of Hatha Yoga. Moderate is what most people go for. Practices of mantra, practices of worship, idol therapy, practices of observance of fasts. These are moderate forms of practice. Attending spiritual lectures, and the mild forms of practice, which go into food control, which go into lifestyle control, which go into slight yoga, which go into keeping the hygiene and cleanliness of all 5 parts of the body. Occasionally going in for panchkarma, pranic cleaning, reiki cleaning. So you can have 3 kinds of intensities, and when we talk of a goal of this type, mild and moderate are only preparations. The real work happens when the intensity becomes extreme. And these two are as much true for psychoanalysis as much for spirituality. Unless one is intensely in touch with one's deeper thoughts and feelings, and one is focused inside, one can't do much in psychoanalysis either. Although this is not a goal in psychoanalysis. The goal here is of samadhi. The goal in psychoanalysis is to be able to overcome the symptoms and be capable to work and love. That is the goal is different. The goal of psychoanalysis is normalcy. The goal of Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is samadhi, supernormalcy. The goal is not to be a happy, productive, normal individual. The goal is to transcend normality and go into a supernormal attainment. This we can see in people who come to psychoanalysis also. The sincerity varies. The pathology also varies, mild, moderate, severe, and the sincerity also varies, mild, moderate, sincere, mild, moderate, severe, and we have all combinations. Mild pathology, extreme sincerity, extreme pathology, mild sincerity, all combinations exist. Patanjali does not go here into specifics of what are the methods available for those who have mild sincerity, moderate sincerity, or extreme sincerity. For that, one has to go into other schools. If we go into Tantra, all the 3 categories of sincerity are given different types of programs to follow, sadhanas to follow. If you go to yoga, the same thing. In fact, Patanjali himself, in the second chapter of this very book, talks about the 8-fold path to samadhi. And in that, he slowly moves from preliminary paths, which are for mild, to moderate, to those who have extreme intensity. So if we look at the first 2 parts, first 2 steps of the 8-step process of Patanjali, which will come in the second chapter. Step 1 and 2 essentially are for those who have mild sincerity. Step 3 and 4 are for those who have moderate sincerity. And thereafter, the real work begins where you require very high sincerity. So Patanjali says one way to reach the state of samadhi is with intensity and focus, extreme sincerity. And this he is referring to working on oneself with extreme sincerity, and the work can be related to psychological work or work with the body. So it can involve Hatha Yoga, it can involve Jnana Yoga, or it can involve also Bhakti Yoga or emotional yoga, or work on one's emotions. But he provides an alternative here, that if this, and this is a very long period, it's not something that can be done in a week or a month. Sutras 21 and 22, they refer to a work which takes quite some years. In most cases, it takes between 12 to 24 years. Very few people can achieve less than 12 years. Most people take 12 years to 24 years. Some don't even achieve across a lifetime, and they go on in the next life to achieve it. But he says, apart from this systematic hard work, and if we go into specifics of this, because Patanjali writes in an essential sense. So this knowledge is essential knowledge, not comprehensive knowledge. So it does not go into details of what options are available for mild, moderate, or severe. And there will be categories where somebody will be cut out for Hatha Yoga, somebody for Bhakti Yoga, somebody for Jnana Yoga. And in the Jnana Yoga, you will have all three categories. In Bhakti Yoga, all three categories. Hatha Yoga, all three categories. Some will need a combination of mild Hatha Yoga, and then when the sincerity becomes moderate, something else. When extreme sincerity, something else. Or some will go only on one line. So this is a world of itself, a very detailed, large world of how to do it. That once the intensity is there, thereafter what to do. So Patanjali does not go into details of how do you create a path, a detailed path for each person, as his intensity varies, or maybe some are extremely intense right from the beginning. So based upon personality, pathology, karma, journey of life, intensity of sincerity, he does not go into all these things. He just gives an essential outline of the process, a generalized, generic, essential outline. And he says, if you don't want to go into this long-term work, then alternative is you get absorbed in Ishvara. This is very important, absorbed. Only talking about Ishvara, thinking about Ishvara will not work. You have to be absorbed. The Sanskrit word is Ishwar Pranidhanya. Ishvara is interpreted in various ways. Some people interpret Ishvara to mean the creator of the universe. Some people interpret Ishvara to mean God, whatever God they believe in. And here Patanjali defines what he means by Ishvara. That part of oneself unaffected by the difficulties, the leshas, or the kleshas, to be Sanskrit, to be fair to Sanskrit, kleshas. In English, most of the times we would keep the K silent, but here let's pronounce it as Sanskrit is kleshas. Karma, results, intentions, and samskaras. So that part of ourself which is unaffected by these entities is the Ishvara. And here again Patanjali opens up a Pandora's box, because some people interpret this Ishvara as the Purusha, the observer of the Sankhya. Some people interpret this Ishvara to mean the psychic being of Sri Aurobindo. And some people interpret this Ishvara to mean the central being of Sri Aurobindo. And some people refer to this Ishvara to being the position of Kaivalya of Mahavir, or the nirvana of Buddha. And some people refer to this Ishvara as the state of oneness, the oceanic oneness with existence. So what Patanjali had in mind, I believe, nobody can be sure what he had in mind. We can only have our beliefs, but what appears to me is that possibly this refers to the Purusha of the Sankhya. But left to myself, I would say the psychic being of Sri Aurobindo would be operationally a far better element to dwell into than the observer of the Sankhya, and better to invest in bringing forward the psychic than to invest into strengthening of the Sankhya's Purusha, the observer. But being true to him, it appears to me at least that he is referring to the Sankhya's observer who is unaffected by the psychological contents in the psyche, either the conscious mind or the unconscious mind where the samskaras or tendencies exist, the past exists. So he says one way to achieve samadhi is to dwell in, be in the state of where the Purusha observes everything else, and to strengthen the Purusha, be absorbed in that Purusha, what he calls Ishvara. So here, some people make a theistic interpretation of this Ishvara to say that it refers to a God you believe in. But Patanjali here is talking about Ishvara in a psychological sense because it refers to that Ishvara which is a part of oneself. And by part of oneself, he is not mentioning the immanent God or the immanent Ishvara. He is talking of a structural part of the psyche. And when you talk about structural component of the psyche, you are not referring to the immanent God. One interpretation can be that Ishvara is that immanent God, but then the immanence will go also into Prakriti, which is overwhelming you. So it's difficult to take that interpretation. So here we are looking at Ishvara as Sankhya's Purusha, the observer. And in psychoanalysis, slowly we see that the observing ego, as psychoanalysis calls it, is getting more significance. It's also coming from mindfulness. As mindfulness becomes more popular, people start appreciating the whole value of the observer, the drashta or the sakshi of Hindu spirituality. And then, so he says, just be absorbed in that Ishvara, that part of you which is unaffected by this, and that can be anything. It can be the Purusha, it can be a position of Kaivalya, any position where you have a part of yourself unaffected by this psychic material. So if you be absorbed in that part which is unaffected by this ordinary psychic material of attachment, aversion, quality, like, dislike, pleasure, pain, if you are in such a state, some part of yourself which is unaffected by all this, then being absorbed in that state will deliver you into the state of samadhi. And once you are in the state of samadhi, what happens? There lies potent all knowledge. And here the knowledge referred to is essential knowledge, not comprehensive knowledge. We are not referring to a type of knowledge which says, what is the distance between sun and the moon? Give it to me to 5 decimals in feet, meters and inches. Not that kind of knowledge. It's not referring to knowledge like what is the boiling point of water if I put 5 grams of sugar, 5 grams of salt and 1 liter of mercury in 5 liters of water. What is the boiling point of that water? It is not referring to that kind of knowledge. It is referring to essential knowledge. It's not referring to specific detailed scientific knowledge. It is referring to essential knowledge. It is referring to intuitive knowledge in terms of yes and no. So if you put before a person who is in that state, that is the answer to this boiling water A or B, intuitively he can say, if you tell him A or B what it is, intuitively he can say perhaps A or B. But he cannot figure out what is the boiling point to the 5 points after decimal. So you can't go to him and say, give me a chemical compound which can cure COVID in 20 minutes. Give me a tablet of 5 mg. And what will be the chemical composition of that tablet? It is that kind of knowledge is not referred to here. The knowledge referred to here is of nature of essential knowledge and intuitive knowledge. So we are referring to essential knowledge, intuitive knowledge, spiritual knowledge and mystical knowledge. Those are the categories of knowledge that lie potent in us. And also it includes parapsychological knowledge. Those 5 categories of knowledge lie potent in us. And much of that potent becomes actual when we go into the state of samadhi and live there for a long time. Right? And this has profound implications on what is knowing and what is knowledge, and what are the types of knowledge. This is where Patanjali has to be interpreted in epistemological terms. What are the types of knowledge? And what is knowing? And how does the state of knowing affect our knowing? That the moment you get into this state, knowing becomes possible, which without getting into the state, the knowing is not possible. So this opens up this whole area of epistemology. And epistemology is something which is yet to come deeply in psychoanalysis. I have tried to bring epistemology into my heat model of the mind, but generally we have not brought epistemology in. For example, if you talk about the split is open and there is the ecstasy of the good breast and the terror of the bad breast in psychoanalysis, we don't go into how this process of knowing happens, of knowing something as the all good and something as the all bad, and then fearing the attack. In more elemental terms, you don't deconstruct it further. Similarly, you don't deconstruct further the Oedipus. You don't deconstruct the anal stage phenomena. You don't deconstruct in elemental terms the creation of the healthy self or creation of the unhealthy self of cohort. So Patanjali, because he's dealing only with essential spiritual knowledge, he says there lies potent all knowledge in that state of samadhi. That is all he says. He does not go into what is the kind of knowledge, how it activates, why it activates only in that state and no other state. Patanjali does not go into those specifics. He keeps to his flavor of the book, which is the flavor of essential generic spiritual knowledge. That Ishvara was also the guru of ancients, for he is not temporal. This is where something very strange happens, that this is something which is supra-conscious mind. It is something transpersonal. That there exists something in us with which if we identify and if we strengthen and develop that part and be with it slowly gives us knowledge of the type which is not possible by being in ordinary states of mind that we are in. And with that knowledge and the peacefulness of mind, slowly it takes us to the state of samadhi, and there even more generic spiritual knowledge happens. And this part of us which guides us to the state of samadhi and gives us knowledge and guidance on the way. It exists in all of us, and it does the same thing when we get in touch with it, and that is supra history. It does not change according to the historical process. So thousands of years back, when somebody got in touch with this part of himself, it led him to samadhi, and today also it does the same thing. So he is talking about an eternal guru inside all of us. And good to recollect of the eternal guru inside of all of us on today's day, which is the day of Guru Purnima, where we worship the guru outside and the guru inside. And Patanjali is referring to that eternal guru inside who is present in all human beings if they find it out and be with it. And this guru inside is not temporary. The man dies, but this guru does not die with the man. It is present in every man. So in that sense, it is trans-temporal, trans-history, trans-historical. It's not, this part of us has nothing to do with situations outside which are changing in the historical process. It also has nothing to do with the religious belief or culture into which we are. It is a part of all of us. There is a guru, a teacher inside, waiting for us to find it out and allow it to lead us ahead into this journey for samadhi. And when Patanjali talks about the guru, I feel tempted to interpret the word Ishvara as the psychic being rather than the observer of Sankhya. Patanjali may have had in his mind Sankhya's observer, and being absorbed in Sankhya's observer, the psychic might get a chance to guide even if it's not directly realized. So one is absorbed in Sankhya's observer, but that absorption enables the psychic to give more guidance. And it might be felt as though the guidance is coming from the observer, but actually it is coming from the psychic. This seems to be more possible to me because he does not talk about the psychic So that is one way to understand it, that he might be talking about Sankhya's observer, but in operations what would be happening is the psychic operationally comes in the front, although experientially it has not yet still come in the front. The essential descriptor of this Ishvara, if you want to describe this in language, the description in language is Om. And the Om is called the Pranava. So if you have to speak of this Ishvara, if you have to describe it in language, the descriptor is Om. That part of us which is a guru inside of us, which is present in every human being, it was as much present in the ancients as it is present in you and me. If you want to describe that thing in language, the description is Om. And this is called the Pranava. The first sound, the first word. And what is the importance? He gives the importance here, that if you keep doing recitation and contemplation on Om, the Pranava, you will know, you will get in touch with the Ishvara, the Guru inside of you. And if you find this Guru inside of you and get absorbed in it, it will lead you to Samadhi. So he shows one more path to Samadhi, that you keep reciting and contemplating on Om. And this opens up a very large area of mantra. The use of sounds, use of words for inner change, something that psychoanalysis is yet even to touch. And just as you can use sounds, you can also use visuals. You can also use imagination. You can also use your relating to the idol. All those are paths for inner development. So one of the paths is this whole use of sound, and one of the very popular sound used for self-development and self-change is the sound Om. You just have to recite it again and again and contemplate upon its meaning. What does it mean? And what happens when you, this can be also used in psychoanalysis actually. We are not experimented. We can experiment and do some empirical work and find out what is the effect of use of mantra, use of imagination, use of idol therapy, and how we can apply psychoanalysis to these processes to understand them in process terms. Or if there is something mystical about it, how do we learn that mystical element and bring it into psychoanalysis? Classical psychoanalysis will call all of this blasphemy, not to be touched with a 10-kilometer bar. However, my feeling is that very soon we will see holistic psychoanalysis or a larger holistic psychotherapy in which integration will happen. And there, the type of discussions we are having, that kind of research is possibly will happen. Not possibly, I think it will happen. So he says, recitation and contemplation of Om to know the Guru inside of you, the Ishvara. And thence follows attainment of Purusha. and overcoming of obstacles. This is my interpretation. Some people will use a different word. Some will say attainment of one's true self or attainment of Ishvara. So he says here, if we do recitation and contemplation of Om, it leads to the attainment of Purusha or attainment of Ishvara or attainment of the Guru inside, and then helps us overcome all the obstacles in the path of Samadhi. So it's a two-step process. First attain, find the Guru inside, and Guru inside, number one. Three-step process. Step number one, sorry, four-step process. Step one, contemplate on Om. Step two, find the Guru inside. You can call it Guru, Purusha or Ishvara. Step three, be absorbed in that Guru, Purusha or Ishvara, whatever you call it. Step four, it will help you overcome the obstacles. In step five, you will attain to Samadhi. Now, what are these obstacles in the path of Samadhi? He describes them in details in 1.30 or Sutra 30. Chapter 1, which is 1.30, is chapter 1, Sutra number 30. Obstacles include sickness, procrastination, apathy, doubt, carelessness, laziness, psychopathology, non-attainments of stages of yoga where you get stuck at a particular stage, and instability of your attainment. So either you are stuck at some stage and you cannot go forward, or you are at some stage but you fall down, you are not stable at that stage. So first is whatever you have attained, be stable and then move ahead. All these obstacles are removed if you get absorbed in the Purusha, Ishvara or Guru. Here I am tempted to use the word psychic of Sri Aurobindo because operationally that is what happens. The coming into the identification of the psychic and coming into front of the psychic, even if it does not come in the front, it removes substantial amount of obstacles, except for a few which are strongly karmic and have to be experienced through. One gets a question here, can all psychopathology be healed only by recitation of Om? And obviously the answer is no. All these words are contextual, and what they mean, they refer to is something which is in the mild or mild to moderate range. Once you get into the moderate to severe or severe range, you have to go for some help in psychiatry or psychotherapy. This do it yourself cannot happen in extreme cases. So when we say obstacles including psychopathology are healed, we are referring to mild or some mild to moderate range psychopathology. We are not referring to severe or moderate to severe range of psychopathology. So there is a limitation of this statement. It is meant to be true in a particular context. It is not a universal absolute. We can't ask somebody in schizophrenia or very difficult situation to just recite Om and that will remove all the obstacles including schizophrenia. Same for sickness. We can't ask anybody in terminal sickness to chant Om and he gets over all the sickness. So there is some intensity to which this works. And when something goes beyond that intensity, you have to attend to that problem first by different professional methods and then come to this, or use this as a complementing element to professional help that you are otherwise seeking. But if we are looking at self-work between the sessions, this is a very good self-work. Not only this, there are many other tools which are very good tools for self-work. So here we see Sutras 21 to 30. Patanjali talks about how to attain with intensity and focus the state of samadhi, or by being absorbed in the Ishvara and then allowing it to lead you to the state of samadhi. And how the word Om is a special descriptor of this Guru or the Ishvara inside, and how contemplation of it can also lead us to samadhi. First, by finding the Purusha, what is represented in sound by Om, and then with the help of the Purusha overcome the obstacles. Thank you. I'm sure those who are from psychoanalysis will have a lot of questions. Send them to me at hvindia@gmail.com. If I can, I will address them.